Jack had always felt the pull of the forgotten corners of his small town. He loved venturing into the shadows where ordinary people feared to tread, hoping to uncover something mysterious, something no one else knew about. But nothing could have prepared him for what he found on the outskirts that misty autumn afternoon. The towering silhouette of the circus came into view first, looming like a skeleton against the evening sky. Rusted iron bars twisted into the shape of a gate, the remnants of old posters flapping limply in the breeze. Faded images of smiling clowns with vacant eyes stared back at him, their once vibrant faces now smudged and leering, distorted by age and neglect. But beyond the gate was what truly drew him in, a massive tent, worn and tattered, as though clawed by giant hands, yet still somehow standing proud, as if defying the elements. A sign above the gate, barely legible through layers of grime and decay, read, "Hawthorne's Magnificent Circus. Marvels beyond imagination." Jack felt a chill run down his spine as he read it aloud, the words leaving a strange, bitter taste in his mouth. This place had been abandoned for decades. Everyone in town knew that. And yet a flicker of light shimmered from within the tent, a faint glow pulsing like a heartbeat. The rational part of Jack's mind urged him to turn back. But the thrill-seeker in him was stronger. What if there was something amazing inside, something no one had seen in years? He reasoned. The allure of the unknown tugged at him, and so, with a deep breath, he pushed through the iron gate, his footsteps muffled by the thick, damp grass that covered the once popular grounds. As he stepped further into the circus grounds, a strange silence blanketed the air, broken only by the creak of the rusty gate swinging shut behind him. He felt a spike of anxiety at the sound, but brushed it off. Just an old gate, he thought. But as he looked around, he noticed something odd. Despite the wind outside, the air here was deathly still, thick and heavy with the scent of old cotton candy, the kind that clung to the back of his throat and refused to fade. The smell grew stronger as he approached the main tent, its entrance flanked by two faded clown statues whose faces seemed to twist with hidden malice. With every step, Jack felt the atmosphere shift, growing colder, almost oppressive. And then he heard it, a faint, unnatural giggle coming from deep within the tent. It was high-pitched and hollow, echoing in the empty grounds, cutting through the silence with a chilling clarity. He froze, his heart pounding, but the eerie sound continued, growing louder, more insistent. It wasn't the joyful laughter of a clown trying to make people smile. It was twisted, mocking, as if something was watching him, enjoying his hesitation, savoring his fear. Despite the creeping dread clawing at his gut, Jack edged forward. He reached out to the tent flap and slowly pulled it open. Darkness greeted him, thick and impenetrable, swallowing the weak light filtering in from the outside. But as his eyes adjusted, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. A dimly lit pathway leading into the heart of the tent, lined with broken mirrors, each one reflecting his anxious face back at him, but subtly distorted, as though something in the reflection wasn't quite right. The laughter grew louder, filling his ears, but now it was accompanied by other sounds. The squeak of clown shoes on wet ground, the slow, rhythmic tap of a cane, and a raspy, strained voice crooning a twisted version of a nursery rhyme. Jack's pulse thundered as he stared down the ominous corridor of reflections, realizing too late that he'd crossed a boundary he never should have. And then, without warning, the laughter stopped. A tense silence fell, and from somewhere in the depths of the tent, a voice whispered in a low, mocking tone, "Welcome, Jack. We've been waiting for you." Jack's skin prickled with dread as the voice echoed through the tent, taunting and sinister, as though it were caressing his very bones. He took a step back, but it was too late. The tent flaps behind him snapped shut with a violent rush of wind, sealing him inside. He whipped around, yanking at the fabric, but it wouldn't budge. His breath quickened, his hands trembling. No way out. The laughter resumed, closer now, weaving in and out of the shadows like a living, breathing thing. Jack turned slowly, his eyes darting between the broken mirrors lining the path. Each reflection seemed to watch him, their eyes gleaming with a twisted intelligence, smirking as he struggled to keep his composure. But the reflections were off. In each one, he looked slightly different, distorted, his face elongated in some, his mouth twisted into an unnatural grin in others. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he noticed movement. A figure in one of the mirrors. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he tried to focus. But the figure seemed to slide from one mirror to the next, flitting from reflection to reflection with an eerie fluidity. The figure, a clown, wore a costume patched together with faded, mismatched colors. Its face paint was smeared and cracked, revealing patches of rough, gray skin beneath. Its eyes were empty, hollow sockets, yet Jack could feel its gaze fixated on him, drinking in his fear. Looking for a way out? The voice whispered from somewhere unseen. Jack swallowed hard, his throat dry. He could feel sweat trickling down his neck, cold and clammy. This can't be real, he thought, clutching his head, trying to shake off the sense of unreality. But then, another figure appeared in a mirror to his left. Another clown, this one taller, thinner, its mouth stretching impossibly wide into a leer that bared rows of razor-sharp teeth. It wore an oversized bow tie and held a single balloon, black as night, its surface rippling as though alive. Jack backed up, stumbling into yet another mirror. His reflection grinned back at him, its eyes wide, filled with gleeful malice. Before he could scream, the reflection morphed, his face stretching and contorting, the eyes rolling back to reveal empty sockets. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the horror, his heartbeat pounding in his ears. But the whispers continued, louder, surrounding him. "Don't be shy, Jack," one of the voices cooed. "We've been waiting just for you. Come and play." The lights overhead flickered to life, casting a sickly yellow glow along the narrow path. It led deeper into the tent, winding toward a doorway draped in crimson velvet. The faint sounds of carnival music drifted from beyond the door, distorted and warped like a record played backward, chilling him to his core. But there was no other way to go, and the whispers urged him forward, relentless, weaving a spell of unease that crawled under his skin. Jack took a cautious step forward, and then another. The mirrors on either side seemed to crowd closer as he moved, the reflections pressing against the glass, twisted faces clawing and pushing, eager to reach him. The path narrowed, forcing him to walk in single file, and with each step, he felt the fabric of reality slipping away, the world becoming more like a dream or a nightmare. He fought the urge to scream, to turn and run, but some force pulled him onward, tugging at his mind with an iron grip. When he reached the velvet doorway, he hesitated, heart pounding, his fingers brushing against the heavy fabric. And then he heard it, a faint whisper, not from the mirrors or the clowns, but from something deeper inside. "Once you cross, you're one of us," it hissed, sending chills down his spine. But before he could pull back, a hand, cold and clammy, shot out from the curtain and grabbed his wrist with impossible strength, yanking him forward into the dark beyond. Jack stumbled, trying to wrench his arm free, but the grip tightened, almost bone-crushing. The lights around him dimmed, plunging him into near darkness as he was dragged forward, deeper into the heart of the tent. When his eyes adjusted, he found himself standing in the center of a vast, empty ring, the kind meant for performers, surrounded by rows of seats that stretched into darkness. The faint glimmer of lights above cast an eerie glow on the seats, which were filled, every single one, with rows of clowns, silent, motionless, their eyes fixed on him. Each clown was grotesque in its own unique way. Some had impossibly wide grins that stretched across their faces. Others had arms and legs twisted at unnatural angles, their clothes patched with strange symbols and stains. The silence was suffocating, thick as fog. Jack could barely breathe. His skin crawled as he realized every clown was watching him, their hollow eyes tracking his every move, their painted faces frozen in an array of horrific expressions. Then a spotlight blazed to life, illuminating the center of the ring, where a clown unlike the others stood, grinning at him with eyes that glowed a sickly green. This one was taller, with a top hat adorned with wilting flowers, and his makeup was smeared to give the appearance of melting flesh. He held a cane, which he tapped against the ground, the sound echoing ominously. "Welcome to the show, Jack," the ringmaster hissed, his voice scraping against Jack's ears like nails on glass. "Tonight's performance is just for you." As the ringmaster raised his cane, the crowd of clowns began to clap in unison, a slow, haunting rhythm that echoed through the tent, each clap a thud against Jack's sanity. He could feel the walls closing in, the clowns' laughter swelling, a horrifying symphony that seemed to resonate from somewhere deep within the earth. Jack tried to scream, but no sound escaped his lips. As Jack stood frozen in the spotlight, his every nerve screaming for him to run, the ringmaster stepped forward, his movements slow, deliberate, his grin stretching impossibly wide. With a flourish, he extended his arms to the audience of grotesque clowns, who erupted into a chaotic cacophony of laughter and applause, their voices overlapping, high-pitched and discordant, clawing at Jack's ears. "Ladies and gentlemen," the ringmaster bellowed, his voice thick and heavy, filling the tent like fog. "Tonight, we present a very special guest, young Jack, here to join our show forever." Jack's stomach twisted. He looked frantically around, searching for an escape, but every exit was blocked by rows upon rows of staring clowns, their painted faces twisted with anticipation, their eyes gleaming with a malevolent hunger. "Don't be shy," the ringmaster crooned, tapping his cane on the ground in a rhythmic beat. The lights dimmed, leaving Jack alone in a narrow beam of light. Shadows seemed to stretch and grow around him, twisting into jagged, sharp shapes that pressed in on him from all sides. "Let's begin with something simple, shall we?" The ringmaster tilted his head, his grin widening, as he gestured to the far end of the ring. Slowly, something began to move, slithering into the spotlight, its shape obscured by a long, striped sheet. Jack's heart pounded as he tried to make out what it was, but the thing was writhing, twisting like a snake, sliding across the dirt floor with a strange, wet sound. As it drew closer, the sheet slipped away, revealing a clown unlike any he'd ever seen. Its body was elongated, stretched out to impossible lengths, and it crawled forward on all fours, its joints bending and twisting at unnatural angles. Its mouth stretched across its face, filled with rows of needle-sharp teeth, each one filed to a point. The clown let out a low, gurgling growl, dragging its fingers along the ground, its bloodshot eyes locked onto Jack with an intense, predatory gaze. Jack stumbled back, his throat tight, his legs quivering with the urge to flee. But the ringmaster held out his cane, barring his escape, his expression one of twisted glee. "No, no, Jack," the ringmaster sneered, his voice dropping to a low hiss. "The fun has only just begun." The creature lunged forward with shocking speed, its limbs contorting as it scuttled toward him, like a massive spider. Jack scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet as he tried to dodge its reach. He managed to get back on his feet, his hands shaking, but the creature was relentless, its grin widening as it closed the gap between them. "Why so frightened, Jack?" the ringmaster's voice boomed, echoing throughout the tent. "It's just a little game. We like games here, don't we?" The clowns in the audience erupted into hysterical laughter, their cackling voices filling the air, blending together in a horrifying symphony that only seemed to fuel the creature's relentless pursuit. Jack could feel his strength waning, his limbs heavy with exhaustion. The air in the tent seemed thicker, each breath harder to draw, as though something was siphoning his energy, feeding off his fear. The creature cornered him against the edge of the ring, its mouth stretching wider, drool pooling from the corners of its lips as it let out a low, menacing chuckle. It reached out, its claw-like fingers grazing his arm, sending a jolt of ice-cold terror through his body. Jack tried to scream, but his voice caught in his throat, choked by the suffocating dread that surrounded him. Suddenly, the ringmaster snapped his fingers, and the creature froze, its grin fading as it turned its head toward him, almost disappointed. The ringmaster lowered his cane, giving Jack a mocking smile. Now, we don't want our guest to wear out too soon, do we?" He turned to the crowd, spreading his arms wide. There's still much more fun to be had. The crowd of clowns clapped in a slow, eerie rhythm, their applause a mocking echo of the excitement in the ringmaster's voice. Jack watched in horror as the creature slithered back into the shadows, its eyes lingering on him until it disappeared completely. He allowed himself a moment's relief, but it was short-lived. The ringmaster's eyes gleamed as he gestured toward a platform on the far side of the ring. A series of ropes and pulleys descended from above, and Jack could make out the shape of a large, darkened cage hanging from the ceiling. Inside, something moved, shifting restlessly, causing the cage to sway back and forth. The spotlight flickered, revealing flashes of a hulking figure, its silhouette monstrous and misshapen. Jack's blood ran cold as the ringmaster addressed the audience once more, his voice dripping with anticipation. "Now, my dear friends, it's time for the main attraction." With a snap of his fingers, the cage dropped down, landing with a bone-jarring thud in the center of the ring. The figure inside growled, its eyes gleaming from the darkness within, and the scent of decay filled the air, making Jack gag. The ringmaster leaned close to Jack, whispering in a voice that chilled him to his core. "Let's see how brave you really are, Jack." The cage door creaked open, and a massive figure emerged, its body twisted and malformed, patches of clown makeup smeared over its face like a sick parody of joy. The creature's eyes were dull, lifeless, yet filled with a terrible, primal hunger. It stomped forward, its footsteps heavy and unsteady, as if bound by some invisible force, compelled to perform for the grotesque audience. Jack took a shaky step back, his heart pounding as he searched for an escape. Any escape, but the ring was surrounded, the clowns' eager faces pressing closer, their hands clapping in a slow, relentless beat, urging the monster forward. And then, to his horror, Jack noticed something familiar, a glimmer of recognition in the monster's eyes. It looked at him, its expression flickering, as if it knew him, as if it were once something, someone. The ringmaster leaned closer, grinning as he whispered, "Recognize him, Jack? One of our previous guests. He tried to escape too." The horror washed over him like a wave, and he stumbled back, his mind reeling with the realization. The monster lumbered forward, raising a massive, clawed hand, and Jack knew that if he didn't act, he would suffer the same fate. The walls closed in, the clown's laughter echoing, louder, a crushing symphony of horror as the monster took another step closer. But then, through the noise, a faint glimmer caught his eye, a small tear in the fabric of the tent, barely noticeable, just behind the ringmaster. His mind raced, desperate, and he knew it might be his only chance. He took a deep breath, preparing himself for the impossible. He would have to run straight through the ringmaster, dodging the monster, and hope he could tear that flap open wide enough to escape. It was a gamble, but he had no choice. He was either going to die here or take his chances against the impossible. With one last look at the ringmaster's twisted, triumphant smile, Jack steeled himself, his muscles tensing, his mind focused on that single point of light. And he ran. Jack bolted forward, heart racing, every muscle taut as he sprinted directly at the ringmaster, his eyes fixed on the small tear in the tent fabric just behind him. The ringmaster's grin faltered, his eyes widening in surprise, and in that moment of hesitation, Jack veered past him, ducking under the swinging cane and avoiding the monster's swipe by mere inches. He felt the creature's foul breath on his neck, hot and putrid, as its claws grazed his shoulder, slicing through his shirt. Pain flared, but Jack didn't stop. Adrenaline surged through him, driving him toward that faint glimmer of freedom. The crowd of clowns erupted in shrieks and laughter, some jumping from their seats and tumbling down toward the ring, eager to catch him, their limbs bending and twisting in sickening angles as they scrambled closer. Jack reached the torn fabric, his fingers clawing at the thick material, tugging and yanking with all his strength. The rip stretched slowly, agonizingly, each inch feeling like an eternity. He could see the outside world through the tiny opening, a sliver of moonlight spilling in, so close he could almost taste the cool night air. But as he pulled, a chorus of whispers hissed in his ears. "You can't leave, Jack. You belong to us now. He glanced back, and his heart nearly stopped. The ringmaster was advancing on him, his eyes burning with rage, his cane dragging along the ground, creating deep, gouged lines in the dirt. The monster followed closely, its blank, soulless eyes fixed on him, hunger radiating from its twisted form. With one final, desperate yank, Jack tore the fabric wide enough to squeeze through. He thrust his arms and shoulders through the opening, feeling the cool night air on his skin, a stark contrast to the stifling, foul-smelling atmosphere of the tent. He pulled himself forward, scraping his arms and legs against the torn edges, wriggling desperately, until he felt his body slide free, collapsing onto the grass outside. He lay there for a moment, panting, his chest heaving, the ground beneath him solid and real. Relief flooded his senses, and he closed his eyes, savoring the feeling of escape, of freedom. But as he opened his eyes, he noticed something strange. The world outside wasn't as he'd left it. The grass was a sickly shade of green, almost gray, and the trees that lined the field were twisted, their branches gnarled and reaching like skeletal fingers toward the sky. An unnatural fog hung low over the ground, swirling around his ankles, and the familiar landmarks of his town had shifted and warped as though viewed through a distorted mirror. Jack staggered to his feet, glancing around in growing panic. He was out of the tent, but something was wrong, terribly wrong. And then he heard it, the familiar high-pitched giggle drifting from somewhere in the fog. He spun around, heart pounding, and saw, to his horror, a small group of clowns emerging from the mist, their bodies swaying as they moved, their grotesque faces twisted into mocking smiles. They fanned out, surrounding him, their eyes glittering with a sick enjoyment. One of them, a short, stocky clown with red paint smeared like blood across his mouth, stepped forward, his voice low and sing-song as he chanted, "You can't run, Jack. You're part of the circus now." Jack backed up, his mind racing, but every direction he turned, more clowns appeared, slipping through the fog, blocking his escape. He was trapped again, only now there was no tent, no ring, just an endless stretch of fog and a sea of grinning, leering faces. The ringmaster's voice boomed from somewhere within the fog, echoing eerily. "You thought you could escape, but our circus isn't bound by walls or tents. It's everywhere, Jack. It's in you now." Jack felt a chill run through him as the reality sank in. He hadn't escaped. The circus wasn't just a place. It was something more, something that had seeped into him the moment he'd entered, warping the world around him, trapping him in its twisted reality. Desperate, Jack turned and ran into the fog, his heart pounding, his legs burning as he sprinted through the murky darkness. The sounds of laughter and footsteps followed him, growing louder with each passing second, echoing in his mind, filling him with a terror he couldn't shake. The clowns were close behind, their grotesque faces appearing and disappearing in the fog, like nightmares brought to life. Just when he thought he couldn't run any longer, he stumbled upon a lone figure standing in the mist. It was a young woman, her face pale, her eyes wide with fear, her clothes tattered and torn. She looked at him with a mixture of recognition and sorrow. "You're new, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice filled with a haunted sadness. "I tried to escape too, but it's no use. The circus never lets us go." Jack stared at her, his chest heaving, a sense of hopelessness settling over him. She took a step closer, her gaze flickering to the shadows in the fog, where the clowns lurked, watching, waiting. "They keep us here," she continued, her voice a trembling whisper. "We're part of their show now. Forever." A scream tore through the fog, high-pitched and agonizing, and Jack's heart sank as he realized it was his own. The laughter swelled, growing louder, filling his ears, his mind, drowning him in a sea of madness. The woman's face twisted into a cruel smile, her eyes darkening, and she let out a low, mocking laugh. "Welcome to the circus, Jack. It's showtime." The fog closed in, and Jack's world dissolved into a blur of laughter, terror, and darkness. Jack's scream echoed into the fog, swallowed by the thick air as the cruel laughter grew louder, enveloping him in a cacophony of madness. He stumbled backward, his legs weak and his vision blurring, every shadow in the mist twisting into sinister shapes, reaching out with gnarled fingers that clawed at his mind. He was losing himself, slipping away into this nightmare. But then, a faint whisper, barely audible, cut through the chaos. A voice, calm and steady, calling his name. He turned, desperate for any glimpse of escape, and saw a faint glimmer of light flickering in the distance, barely visible through the fog. A strange feeling tugged at him, like a thread pulling him toward it. It was his only chance. Gathering every ounce of strength, Jack forced himself to run, his feet pounding against the damp ground, his breaths ragged. The twisted faces of clowns lunged at him from the fog, laughing and jeering, their hands reaching, cold and grasping. But he pushed through, his eyes locked on that distant light, his last hope. As he drew closer, the fog began to lift, revealing the faint outline of a small tent, much smaller and humbler than the grand one he had first entered. The light came from within, casting a warm, golden glow that was strangely inviting, a stark contrast to the cold darkness surrounding him. Jack didn't hesitate. He dove toward the tent, his heart pounding as he threw himself through the entrance. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the faint scent of something sweet, familiar. The tent was empty, save for a small wooden table in the center, and on it sat an old, dusty book. Its leather cover was cracked and worn, the edges frayed, as though it had been left here for ages waiting. Jack approached it cautiously, his fingers brushing the cover, and as he did, a strange energy pulsed through him, filling him with an odd sense of clarity. The book fell open, its pages blank at first, but as he stared, words began to appear, written in elegant, looping script. "This is your only way out," the words read. Asterisk, the circus is bound by a curse, a twisted spell that keeps it alive. To break it, you must confront the ringmaster, see through his mask, and destroy the heart of his power. Asterisk. Jack's hands trembled as he read, each word sinking deep into his mind. He didn't know how he'd do it, but it was his only chance. He had to end the curse, had to face the ringmaster. Steeling himself, he closed the book, feeling a newfound resolve harden within him. The warmth faded, and he realized the tent had started to dissolve, fading back into the fog. But this time, he felt something different. He wasn't running anymore. He was ready. He stepped back out into the mist, and there, standing a few yards away, was the ringmaster, his eyes glinting with that same sick amusement, his grin stretched impossibly wide. "So, you found the book," the ringmaster sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Think you can break my spell, boy?" Jack clenched his fists, ignoring the fear clawing at his insides. "Your circus doesn't belong here. It's a prison, a nightmare. And I'm going to end it." The ringmaster laughed, a deep, grating sound that sent a shiver down Jack's spine. Bold words. But this place feeds on fear, on the souls of those foolish enough to stumble inside. You're just another pawn, another plaything. But Jack stood his ground, refusing to let the taunts shake him. "Show me your true face," he demanded, his voice stronger than he felt. "Show me who you really are." The ringmaster's grin faltered, his eyes narrowing, and for the first time, Jack saw something flicker there. Uncertainty, perhaps even fear. The mist around them thickened, swirling with dark shadows, but Jack focused, channeling every ounce of defiance into his gaze. "You don't scare me anymore," he said, each word steady, defiant. "You're just a mask, a monster hiding behind a trick." The ringmaster let out an enraged roar, and his face began to twist, the painted smile stretching and warping, melting away to reveal something dark and hollow, a face with empty eye sockets and a mouth full of sharp, broken teeth. His body shifted, his form unraveling, revealing a creature more nightmare than human. A thing made of shadows, its body contorted and broken, dripping with the dark energy of the curse that had kept him bound to this place. With a final, desperate scream, Jack lunged forward, grabbing hold of the ringmaster's cane. the heart of his power. The moment he touched it, an icy pain shot through him. But he held on, pouring every ounce of defiance, every shred of strength he had, into the object. The cane began to crack, splintering under his grip, and the ringmaster let out a blood-curdling shriek, his form beginning to shatter, to break apart like glass. "No!" the ringmaster screamed, his voice a horrid, rasping wail. "You can't do this. The circus needs me. It needs you." But Jack didn't stop. He twisted the cane, feeling the power within it fracture collapse. And as it shattered in his hands, the world around him began to dissolve. The fog lifted. The twisted faces of the clowns faded into shadows, their mocking laughter trailing off into silence. The ringmaster's form collapsed into darkness, his last words fading into a faint whisper. "You'll never truly leave." And then there was silence. Jack blinked, his breath steadying as he found himself standing on the outskirts of town, the sun just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting a gentle, golden glow over the landscape. The circus was gone. The twisted tents and nightmarish figures vanished, as though they had never existed. For a moment he stood there, taking in the silence, the peace. But a chill ran through him as he remembered the ringmaster's final words. "You'll never truly leave." As he turned to walk back toward town, he caught a glimmer of movement out of the corner of his eye, a faint flicker of a smile, just at the edge of his vision, lingering in the morning mist. And somewhere, just barely audible on the breeze, he heard the echo of distant laughter, promising that the circus wasn't truly gone. It would wait, lurking in the shadows, until the next soul stumbled into its grasp. And Jack knew, with a certainty that sent a chill down his spine, that he'd never truly be free of the circus. It would be with him always, a shadow on the edge of his reality, waiting.